2022 is already shaping up to be one of the best years in gaming, with so many great games coming out left and right, from the twin-stick immersive sim Weird West to the hilarious but also genuinely very fun Strangers of Paradise.
Chaos.
And of course, we had the near historical moment in gaming that was Elden Ring, a game hyped to all hell and back, actually living up to and surpassing those expectations. The original Dark Souls is tied up there as my favorite game of all time, so I've been looking forward to this one since announcement, and it did not disappoint. Since Dark Souls' release, we've had a slew of games from AAA to indie try to replicate one facet or another of its formula, but the element that's so important and seemingly so hard for other developers to replicate is its sense of discovery and mystery. Elden Ring made that one of its core tenets: mysterious notes, teleporting chests, and the old illusory walls. The feeling of unearthing a secret is so unique to the medium of video games and something I can't get enough of. And while Elden Ring was a masterclass at this, there was another game that was even better. Tunic is the kind of indie game that's got a lot more going on than at first glance. Zelda inspiration is nothing new in indie games, and doubly so for Dark Souls, but as a fan of both, I knew this would be a game I had to check out, even if it was just some sort of nostalgia cash grab. But Tunic taps into something far greater than nostalgia here, that sense of discovery. Tunic starts out basic enough, isometric low-poly Zelda with a fox. Everything changes though when you pick up your first little white square. You see, Tunic doesn't explain anything. Not its controls, nor objectives, though some of that you should be able to piece together pretty easily. But for everything else, you have to find these little white squares, which are the in-world pieces of the game's manual. Here you'll find something of a mix between a physical game's little guide booklet and a full-on Brady Games game guide, complete with some amazing art and handwritten notes of hints for secrets. I don't know about you guys, but as a child, I probably spent just as much time crouched in Barnes & Noble reading the Kingdom Hearts 2 game guide as I did playing any game, so for me, this was really something special. Much of the text is written in this other language, with random English words thrown in. All reminds me of stumbling your way onto a Japanese game FAQ as a kid. You can actually decipher this language, but I never did. When you switch to the book view, your game screen even switches over to this pixel art version of the game, complete with CRT warping and scan lines. This is one of those brilliant things in a game that you just hope other games shamelessly steal one way or another. The art is amazing. The half pages you receive push you to find more pages to complete the context. You begin to learn mechanics you've had from the start but never had explained, and soon you're experimenting with interactions, returning to older areas, understanding just how open this game was from the start. These little white squares instantly became my most sought after game collectible. In the end, I found myself completely uncaring about the actual quest of the game or upgrading my character. I just wanted that full game manual. That's not to downplay the game's beautiful visual style. The low poly models combined with the game's cozy lighting is really stunning. I especially love the behavior of things like tall grass and cut trees. The music is also phenomenal. Most of the soundtrack are these relaxing, ethereal, synth-on piano tracks, great to melt away into the back of your brain while you're playing. Tracks usually start out with a simple arrangement that slowly evolves over the course of the song into something complex and hauntingly beautiful. It does a wonderful job conveying the feeling of old meets new you'll find in the game, often using a mixture of synth and chiptunes with traditional instruments. Some tracks remind me of classic SNES and Genesis music, while others feel more in line with vaporwave artists like Haircuts for Men. It's a good thing this system works so well, because without it, as far as gameplay goes, Tunic is a mostly by-the-numbers Zelda meets Dark Souls game. You'll be hunting for shortcuts, solving puzzles, and doing the all-too-familiar song and dance of dodge and strike. Tunic can get away with explaining so few mechanics because of how simple and common its basic mechanics are. You're Link with an Estus flask and iframes. It's fun enough, don't get me wrong, but coming from Death's Door, a very similar game, but with its emphasis mostly on combat and bosses, I was a bit disappointed by Tunic's variety. I was also surprised by how few items the game actually gives you. The majority of your inventory is saved for consumables, which for me means it will only ever get used by accident. And your magical items are mostly used for combat, I'd say. I do prefer that to stuff in the game with single-use items that just solve one type of puzzle in one type of area, like most modern Zeldas did, but I was still wanting more. This also means the majority of Tunic's main puzzles and shortcuts use the game's very bare-bones basic mechanics and simple knowledge. Most shortcuts you don't even actually open, you just discovered it was there all along, hidden by perspective, which is still very cool, don't get me wrong. The game even goes so far as to give you access to the game's fast travel system from the start. it just doesn't tell you how to use it. But this leads to shockingly few moments where I feel like the items were used in a creative way. But those puzzles are not the real puzzle of the game. Like I said, this is a game of discovery, and I don't want to say too much, but if you stick around and try to get the true ending, you're going to discover some of the most obscure puzzles I have ever found in a game. If you enjoyed hunting for the anti-cubes and Fez, they're like that type. You'll have fun. It's only really now that I sit back and write my thoughts on the game that I dwell on some of the negatives. Sure, Tunic could have been a better Zelda game with some more interesting item selection, or a better Souls game with better combat. But when I was playing, I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was thinking about where the next goddamn piece of the manual is. Tunic is a game that does most things pretty good, and one thing incredibly well: the sense of discovery and secret. If that matters to you all in a game, Tunic is a can't miss. It's also on Game Pass, so you can get it for free, but it's well worth the cost of entry otherwise.